Welcome to Learn a New Language in 6 months or less. Welcome, you've just been granted a new superpower. I'm very, very happy that you're here, and I want to thank you for joining. How is it possible that you can actually learn a new language in 6 months or less when, as a kid studying in school, it took you 5 years not to be able to speak a foreign language, right? Because the method is what matters. The system is what matters. The system always trumps the volume of work. If you have a very bad, poorly designed system, it's never going to work, whatever the effort, whatever the input is. Maximum output is what we're looking for. We're looking for the best effort to outcome ratio. And that's what I'm going to teach you. You've just been granted a new superpower, really. This method I'm going to teach you, this way to approach language learning, is what allowed me to speak Japanese in much less than a year, English in much less than a year, and I know that the course states 6 months or less, but I didn't have the right method back then. It was completely empirical. So I found out later on that there was a way to accelerate things in a way that I never thought possible. So, for example, when I went to Spain 20 years ago, I didn't speak a word of Spanish, and I had only a couple of weeks to, get myself acquainted with the language. And it took me 2 weeks to learn the basics of the language, and after a week in Spain, I could speak with everybody there. I could actually have conversations with them. So it was 3 weeks to be able to survive in Spain and speak not perfect Spanish, but proper enough that I could get by. How would you like to go to Paris or come to Paris? Because Paris is where I'm shooting this course actually. So to come to Paris and speak with the French people, and naturally not have to rely on a language that is foreign to them. It's always respectful to speak the language of the place you are going to. How would you like to go to Italy and Rome or Venice and actually understand what people are saying to you, and maybe Madrid or Barcelona or I don't know, Tokyo. Tokyo is a wonderful place to visit, but a lot of Japanese people actually are scared of foreigners because they're afraid that they won't be able to communicate effectively because most people don't speak proper English over there. If you go to the Japanese countryside, trust me, English is it's not going to cut it. So learning a language is not just a communication tool. Of course, it's very useful for business. If you speak multiple languages, what do you think it's going to do for your business abilities or your resume if you're looking for a job? It's actually quite incredible how languages open up doors everywhere in most situations. So do yourself a favor. Welcome this new ability, welcome this new superpower, and learn at least a couple new languages over the course of the next couple of years, and you will gain a ton by doing this. So welcome to a much bigger world. So the first question we need to answer is, what is language? What is language actually? Is it grammar? Is it vocabulary, words, and put in certain order so that it actually makes sense? In a sense it is, but at a deeper level, language is a way to convey ideas and concepts. It's a way to communicate your needs, thoughts, opinion, quintessential facts of life, whatever, happiness, joy, sadness. Language is a way to convey emotions to somebody else. So in order to learn a new language, you must refrain from seeing the new language as just a set of rules that are set in stone. You must learn to open up to the possibility of actually trying to convey a message, not just pick a word that means something in my language and try to find the same word in the other language and it works. It doesn't work that way. If you go about it that way, you're doomed to fail. In this course, I'm going to show you that with just 1,200 words, a few grammar rules, and a general idea, you can actually communicate pretty effectively. And you're going to learn to communicate at a deeper and deeper and deeper level the more you learn of the language. So it's very essential that you understand that a language is much more than just a set of rules. It's a journey into the spirit of people. And it's very important that you see it that way. If you try to just translate, I mean, Google translates very poorly for that exact reason. If you ever used Google Translate, it does, my God, it's such a bad job that Google Translate does. It's not even funny. So it's much more effective to think of languages as conveyors of ideas and concepts than it is as sets of rules and words, So keep that in mind as you go through the course and learn new stuff. And I assure you that in the long run, you'll be happy that you didn't stick to the rules sometimes. Speaking of rules, here's one. Don't use a phrasebook to learn a language, at least not at this point. When you first encounter a new language and you go to a country and you want to make sure that you have at least a minimal command of the language, most people will go to their favorite bookstore and pick up a phrasebook. What happens? They go to the country, they try and read the phrases in something that sounds like gibberish to most native people of that country. After the native person decodes, reads from the phrasebook, they actually give an answer that you're not going to be able to understand anyway because you don't have any command of the language whatsoever. So phrasebooks at this point are useless, and I would go as far as saying they are actually harmful to you. So just leave the phrasebooks alone at this point. They have their use, but not right now. So if you don't start with a phrasebook, where do you actually start? Well, you start the way every kid does. Learning as if you were kids is actually not a very good idea, but in this case, it's the best start you can get, and that would be the alphabet and the basic sounds of the language you're all learning. Because not everywhere in the world does an A sound like A. For example, in my mother tongue, the A is A. So it's very different, right? And if you go to Japanese, the A is closer to the French one, but they don't have the A, B, C, D, E, F, G stuff. The alphabet is non-existent in Japanese. They have a set of sounds. There are around 50 sounds, which go like this: A, I, U, E, O, Ka, Ki, Ku, Ke, Ko. And the Japanese language is actually a syllabic. So it's not just single sounds, but it's actually compound sounds. And A, Ka. All right? So for example, if you mean fog or mist, it's called kasumi. It's 3 monosyllabic tones, well, dual syllabic tones, kasumi. So it's a very different sound from what an American person would pronounce it like Kasumi, right? Or a French guy, Kasumi. It sounds very different. A Spanish person would sound totally different as well, or Italian. So go to the core of the language, which is the sound. If you can speak a language properly, as far as grammar and rules and vocabulary are concerned. But if I start to speak like that, like any French guy, you're going to have a hard time understanding me. And if I pick an Italian accent to speak in English, it's different as well. And mais si je parle en français, mon accent français correspond parfaitement à la langue française. But if I speak in French, my French accent actually matches the tone and the pace and the rhythm of the French language, which is what I just said in French. All right? So get used to the sounds, because you're going to use it to speak, but you're going to use them as well to understand what people are saying. Because if you can't use a sound, most of the time you cannot identify it in a conversation. So it's very important that you learn to relate to the sounds, the basic sounds of the language you are learning. It can, prove a challenge in some languages. Chinese, it's going to be difficult. There are tons of sounds in Chinese and there are tones, so it's going to be a more difficult language to learn than most languages. But just think about something. Back in the Cold War days, Russian spies used to learn languages in 3 to 6 months, and they were indistinguishable from native speakers in the target country, usually the States. English doesn't sound at all like Russian. So it was a challenge, but they achieved it. Okay? So it's doable. You don't have to be 100%. You don't run the risk of being discovered and sent to jail in some godforsaken place. But you want to sound as natural as possible. You don't want to sound like a French guy speaking English when you speak to American or English people. You need to respect the fact that they shouldn't have to make the effort to understand you. You should make the effort to speak in a very understandable manner. That would be, very respectful of you and very appreciated, trust me. So whenever you go to a new country and you want to learn the language of that country, go back to the alphabet first. Learn to say A, B, C, D, E, F, G if you're studying French. It's not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? A, Ka, Sa, Ta, Na. A, I, U, E, O, Ka, Ki, Ko, Ke, Ko, Sa, Shi, Su, Se, So, Ta, Chi, Tsu, Te, To. In Japanese, for example, there are many, many examples I could give you, but I'll stick to the 3 languages I, mastered the most. So that's it. Go back to the alphabet. Go back to the core sounds, the core tones. And with the core tones also comes a sense of the rhythm of the language. Because the rhythm of English is not the rhythm of French, is not the rhythm of Spanish, is not the rhythm of Russian, is not the rhythm of Japanese or Chinese or Ecuadorian, which is probably a form of Spanish. I don't know. So all that makes for a very interesting first delve into the study of the language, and it will prove so helpful a couple of weeks into the study that you really want to get it down. Okay, so start with the alphabet and the sounds, and the pace, the rhythm of the language will come much more naturally to you, because an A is not an A. It's different feel, okay? So study the alphabet first. All right, this lecture is where the magic begins. Understand that a language is a way to convey emotions. But in order to do that, you need a structure. And the structure has to be common among all individuals speaking the same language. Otherwise, it's just gibberish, right? So by studying a core number of structures that give you maximum applicability over the whole of the language, you can gain mastery of the whole language extremely fast. Good news, you don't have to learn 300 core structures. By studying only 13, you can actually apply them to so many situations, it's mind-blowing. So it's quite easy actually, and I'm not going to lay them out vocally here. I'm going to give you a PDF as a companion to this lecture, and I'm just going to explain why this works in the lecture. But use them as a blueprint to decode any language you want to study. It works for any language, and I mean any language. Every language is the same. It has a core set of structures that you expand upon. By understanding those core structures, you recreate the whole of the language system. All right? So those structures tackle a few core concepts like giving, receiving, having to, needing, possession, direction, those kinds of essential necessities, needs of the human being to survive and to communicate. For example, I must eat the orange, or I gave the book to Paul. I give Paul the book. I receive, I don't know, the apple from Jane. Those kinds of structures are very simple. They actually seem stupid and dumb. But without those basic relationship structures, there's no such thing as a language. And they exist in every single language in the world. Use them to kickstart your study of the language and of its system, not just the words. Don't focus on the words. The words are not important at all. The words are only means to an end. They are means to understanding the structure. So what I want you to do is read those sentences, okay? And find a way to have them translated for you and explained to you. If you just learn the sentences, it's a phrase book. Doesn't do you any good. If you understand how the sentences are structured and understand the role of each word, the part each word plays in the sentence, you're much ahead of the pack. And you can learn as much in 3, 4, 5 hours of practice using those sentences and acquiring vocabulary as you would in 100 hours in a classroom. I promise you that. That's how I do it every single time. It works like magic. So read those sentences, understand why they're important, right? Possession, direction, giving, receiving, being, going somewhere, that kind of stuff. They tackle all those concepts. The tenses, how to imply tense, I will, I was, that kind of stuff. And then you can apply a whole new set of rules that are a little bit more difficult to tackle, like conjugation or alterations to words. In Japanese, for example, some words can become verbs or adjectives, depending on the form they take. So it's kind of tricky sometimes, but you need to understand those very, very core rules in order to gain mastery much faster. All right, the dreadful topic, vocabulary. How are you going to learn those many words, like 1,000 words in 6 months? It sounds like it's a ton, It's actually not, just, think about it. 1,000 words. Let's make it 1,200 words to make the challenge even more dreadful and scary. 1,200 words. Say you give yourself 6 months. 6 months is 24 weeks, approximately. Just a little over that, actually, 26 weeks, but let's keep it at 24 weeks. 24 weeks is 168 days. 168 days means you got to learn 7 words a day, pretty much, to hit the mark of 1,000 words learned or 1,200 words learned. If you learn 10 a day, you've learned 1,600 words, over 1,600 words. Let's say you only work 5 days a week, you learn 50 words per week. That's still over 1,000 words. Okay? And how hard is it to retain 10 words per day? Not that hard. Really not. And you can use tricks and techniques, neuro associations. We're going to talk about it in the second part of the course. But it's really easy to learn 1,000 words in 160 days. It's really nothing. Actually, you can learn 1,000 words in 2 months straight. It's just 30, 40 words a day. It's nothing. You can learn much more than that. Using techniques, you can learn up to 100 words a day, but that's a bit extreme and you got to spend some time on it. So 10, 15 words a day, totally doable, easy enough for anybody, and you hit the mark. Easy. Okay? Next question, which words to learn? Well, ideally, you want to learn the most common words of your target language. And how do you find out what those words are? Well, Google is your friend. You can find lists on Google of the most commonly occurring word in any given language. Or you can get in touch with the Ministry of Education of the country which you intend to learn the language of. And they will actually give you that list, most of them anyway. If you can't find the list, well, learn organically, and we're going to discuss that later on in the course. A fun, simple way to improve your language skills is to open up a book, not a method book, just a, standard, usual story book. I know what you're going to say. Oh, Chris, I'm just a couple of weeks into the study of the language. I don't have a vocabulary. I don't understand the grammar very well. I'm not really comfortable with the phrase structure, all that stuff. I'm still very much, a newbie. Yes, you are, but it doesn't really matter. After 3 weeks applying the method, you should have enough command of the language to read a kid's book. A kid's book is very simple sentences, very simple words. It targets an audience that doesn't have a big command of the language, which is exactly your case. So a kid's book is where I would start. And I would go as far as saying that, fairy tales are your best bet. Why? You know them already. Pick one you know. Sleeping Beauty or Hansel and Gretel, I don't care, Snow White. It doesn't matter. My advice would be to get the original text and get your translation as well. So if you know the text in English, get the English book, and if you're studying Estonian, get the Estonian book, Estonian translation. Because both texts will be virtually identical in both books. They've been written a long time ago. So you know the story, you know the structure, you know what is going to happen, and it's for kids, mostly, well, most of the stories are actually not for kids, but you can find the same versions that are for kids, right? In many, many languages. Or, there are teenage novels that might be working, but their vocabulary needs are much higher. So I wouldn't recommend those books until at least 12, 15 weeks into the study, but you would understand them after 3 months, that's for sure. So it's actually a very fast-paced method. It won't take you 6 years to actually command the language, so you must think differently. You cannot think, my God, I'm just 3 weeks into it and I'm already gonna read a book. It's never gonna work. Yes, it is. Material selection is paramount. You need to understand material selection. What you study is very important. How often you study is very important. How much you study matters. Okay, frequency over volume. And with kids' books, you can go over and over them 3, 4, 5 times until you actually have 100% understanding of what's written in there. So you will have improved tenfold. Okay, so it's very important that you pick a book. Just select wisely. Okay, so this might sound stupid, and I hear you, but you need to listen very carefully, because this lecture could be the most important one to ensure a safe and peaceful travel. You need to learn to count as soon as possible. Most languages use exactly the same system in the lower numbers. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in Japanese, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But when it comes to higher numbers, languages are very different from one another. And I'll use Japanese as an example. When you say 10,000, your unit is 1,000, and you use 10 of them. The Japanese use ichiman, which is 1 unit of 10,000. If you say niman, you say 2 units of 10,000. So 10,000 becomes a multiplier, right? Not 1,000, 10,000. You don't say jusen. Jusen doesn't mean anything in Japanese. At least it doesn't mean 10,000. And they actually will have a hard time understanding that. They will correct your mistake, hopefully, but it's not guaranteed. So learn to count. And I'm going to give you a very, very motivating reason. Money uses counters. If you don't know what 10,000 yen feels like when you lose them, or you unfortunately give them away without realizing you just gave away $100, you're going to feel it, right? So be aware of what numbers mean. That's very important. And learn as soon as possible, because you need to relate easily to the numbers in your target language. That's very important. But there's a trick to some languages that use counters as well as different multipliers. For example, in Japanese, and I'm going to refer to Japanese because you can use the same thing happens in Chinese and many other languages, but I know Japanese mostly. If you want to count 3 cows, you're not going to say 3 cows. You're going to say cows, 3 units. And units of cows is a very specific word. So you need to learn to count big animals. Or beverages. Something that has a shape of a cylinder is hon. It's a counter. Ippon means 1 bottle. Nihon means 2 bottles. Sanbon means 3 bottles. You don't say 3 bottles. You say bottles, 3 bottle units. And it's tricky because when you miss a counter, and there are dozens of them, literally. When you miss a counter, you're gonna, freeze a little bit. So you might want to start early to learn counters and numbers because in some languages, it's very tricky. And if the language you're learning is not that tricky, the better, easier, good, nice, good choice. But if it is, you need to get familiar and comfortable with it as soon as possible. It will save you a lot of trouble. All right, for a change, a behavioral lecture. Be systematic, be organized. If you are messy, your command of the language is not going to happen. You need to be very systematic. So use any tool that you can get your hands on, and especially spreadsheets and doc files. You can also use online tools to have everything along with you wherever you go. If you are taking notes on your personal computer, whether a Mac or PC, and you want to have your files with you, you can use Drive by Google or Evernote or Dropbox and carry your files around with you on your tablet PC or your smartphone. And there are tons, literally tons of applications that will help you organize better. Evernote comes to mind. It's a great app, but a doc file works just as fine, really, especially for that matter. But be systematic, be organized. Whenever you realize there are a couple words you haven't learned yet, note them. Whenever you meet a new grammatical form, note it. A new conjugation, a new verb, a new tense, a new mode, note it. Okay? Take notes. If you take notes and you actually track stuff, you will improve tenfold. I guarantee you that. If you track, you monitor, you improve. Guaranteed. So be systematic, be organized. It's very important. When I was starting to learn English, I was 11 at the time. It was quite difficult to get my hands on English language material. When I was starting Japanese, it was even harder, you can imagine. But there were ways back then to find content that you could study. It was just a little bit more difficult than it is today. Today, everything is just a click away. You go to YouTube and you can immerse yourself in any culture, any language, any geographical location on the planet. That's a thing of beauty, really. And you got to do it. If you want to learn a language, this is the really gateway to learning a language so much faster. You can actually immerse yourself in the language for just as long as you want every day. And the more often and the more you expose yourself to the language, the faster you're going to learn. Because some things are going to come naturally to you that are impossible to explain in a book. Even if you know how to read and how to pronounce the language properly, reading a book is very different than actually hearing native speakers do their thing. When I speak in English, my pace is very different from when I speak in French. In French, it goes like this. Je suis en train de parler en français, mon articulation est très différente. In English, it goes like this. I am speaking in English and my articulation is very different. My pace, my rhythm, the way I bring words, to the foreground or emphasize is very different in both languages. In Japanese, it's even more different because the language sounds so much different from both French and English. So every language has its own groove and pace. And that's something you need to learn organically. And what I want you to do once you get a good grip of the language is start imitating what people are saying. Pick someone saying something, pick a sentence by someone. Tape it, record yourself saying it, compare both sentences, both files. Until it's close to perfect, keep practicing. That's how you get a grip, a grasp of the pace, of the groove, of the rhythm of any given language. And use technology. YouTube is your friend. Google is your friend. It's a world wide web that's available just a click away. Put it to good use for a change. All right, in this day and age, everybody is just a Skype call away. So why not use that amazing thing and find somebody to talk to over the internet that is a native speaker in the language you are learning? It would be so easy. Go to YouTube, go to directories on the internet, find websites, message boards. The internet is full of people that are willing to talk to you, exchange conversations in their home native language, and you can trade in English lessons or French lessons, depends on where you come from, but it's the cheapest way to get private lessons in the language you are learning. It's free. Put it to good use. Use it. It's so simple, and so effective also, because it will teach you stuff you don't learn in books, you don't learn in music, you don't learn on TV. So definitely do that a few weeks into your study. Don't do it as a complete beginner, but once you get a grasp of what the language is, get a couple hundred words under your belt, you're good to go. So go. The most fun you're going to have learning a new language is listening to music from the country from where the language comes from. Spanish music, different from English music, different from French music, different from Russian music, everything is different. But pop songs are pop songs, right? And if you can learn to like or love some band from the country you're learning the language of, well, it's a pretty effective and fun way to remember vocabulary. Although it's sometimes pretty redundant and not very rich, it's always good for, memory practice. So do it. Just, pick a couple songs that you think, have a good rhythm to them and make you want to dance, and translate them. Learn their meaning. Beware, sometimes it's better not to understand what the song is actually saying. But, it's always a fun exercise anyway. So music can be a very effective tool, and we're going to see in the second part how to use it and when to use it and when to start using it for maximum results. Hey, you know what they say? TV is just a media, but it can prove to be a useful one if you're not watching reality shows all day. Look for a channel that broadcasts in the language you are learning. Very effective to be able to study the language and listen to the language at any given time. YouTube is great, but you need to look for stuff. If you have a whole channel that is dedicated to broadcasting, documentaries or shows in the language you are learning, you're golden. You just, turn it on at any given time and watch. It doesn't matter if you actually understand everything that's being said. What matters is that you expose yourself to the language. That's so important. Again, And frequency of exposure is more important than volume. Frequency beats volume every time. 5 minutes a day beats 1 hour a week, right? Okay, so TV, if you have a channel that broadcasts in the language you're learning, turn it on at least once a day for a few minutes. Hey, welcome to section 2. Section 2 is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to learn about the art of language learning, not just techniques, but how to make it flowing and easy and natural and organic. There's really an art to this, and I'm going to show you how it's done. Section 1 was about introducing tools and techniques and approaches. Section 2 is about organizing all of that into a very comprehensive system, a very progressive system, so that you never ever drown. You never lose sight of what we're doing and of what you are doing, because you're going to organize yourself for that. And it will give you every tool under the sun that you actually need in order to tackle the seemingly impossible task of learning a new language in, well, 12 to 25 weeks. This section is organized in a weekly fashion. So you get week 1 to week 12. And through all those 12 weeks, I'm going to show you each and every week how to build upon what you already know and how to prepare for what you don't. Because you're always walking a fine line between what you know and what you want to learn. And this section is all about this. Building on what you know or starting to learn, getting the foundation laid down, how to organize initially, and building upon your newly acquired knowledge that is so fresh that you're scared to use it, and getting to actually using it, putting it into practice, and realizing that you can do it. That's very important. Building your confidence up and actually doing it and learning as organically and as naturally as possible. So that's what we're going to do in the next 12 lectures, 12 weeks, hopefully. Just one thing, if you can work for 30 minutes a day on this, it's a good basis. Okay, it's a good starting point. If you can give it 45 minutes a day, 7 days a week, you're in better shape. If you can give it 1 hour a day, you're golden. 1 hour a day is all you need to learn any new language in 6 months or less. So if you can give it 1 hour a day, that's cool. If you cannot give it 1 hour a day every day, do it when you can. But don't give it 3 hours on the weekends and like 30 minutes every 2-3 days during the week. Try to do something every day for at least 30 minutes. Give it 30 minutes bare minimum every day, and you'll be amazed at your results. Okay? Next lecture, the groundwork, how to organize. Okay, week 1. What do you want to do on week 1? Oh, you want to start learning, your first core sentences, and you're going to do exactly that on top of some other stuff. So what I want you to do on week 1 is go back to the 13 core sentences, 13 core structures that I gave you in section 1, and get those sentences translated into your target language one way or another. And I want you to request that the structure of the target language is indicated under the translation, which means which word does what in the target language. For example, if you say, I'm going to the bank, easy enough. But if you say it in Japanese, bank is actually the first word in a sentence, and there's a word that means to the in Japanese as well, which is second in the sentence. And the third word is actually the verb. So the structure is completely different. And that's where the phrase books fail. They don't explain the structure. And you need to understand the structure. And those 13 sentences, those 13 basic structures I gave you, they actually explain that fact. They showcase how the language, the target language, actually works from the inside. Okay? So in Japanese you would say ginko ni ikimasu. I'm going to the bank. Okay? So it's a fairly simple thing to do, and you can find someone on the interwebs to do that for you. Or you can use Google Translate, but you won't get the structure, and the translation probably will not be accurate. Anyway, so find someone to do it for you. You can go to Fiverr to find someone to do that for you, and you only spend $5. Okay? So it's very cheap to have that done. Do it. Find a way to do it. Then you're going to go to Google and you're going to look up for that 1,000 word list I was talking about. The 1,000 most frequent words in your target language. And you're going to download and print it because you don't want to copy it. 1,000 words takes a while. So that's mostly what you're going to do on week 1, and you're going to start replacing words in those 13 core sentences. You're going to pick words and you're going to start working on replacing words. For example, if one of the sentences goes like John eats the apple, well, you're going to change that to Amy drives the car, for example. And you're going to look up the word to drive, the verb to drive, and the word car. And you're going to start designing your own phrase book. Okay? And I want you to start learning the list 15 words a day in order. All right? Start with the 15 first ones, then 16 to 30, 31 to 45, etc. Okay? So 15 words a day. You're not going to retain it all. It's okay at this point. We're going to talk about vocabulary retention later on, week 3 or 4 or 5, soon. And I'm going to show you how to retain all of that stuff. But you're going to retain some. Make sure you start practicing pronunciation. You know, I should go back to pronunciation, practice myself. And read the alphabet out loud every day in your target language. You can find all of that stuff online, I promise you, no matter what language you're trying to learn. So that's the bare essential, okay? One thing you will have to do is get a pad and a pen and take note of everything new you encounter. And in week 1, it's everything. So note it down, note it on a pad, then report it and type it in a file. Vocabulary, I want you to use a spreadsheet. Left column is the original word in the target language. Right column would be the English translation or the French translation, whichever your mother language is. Okay? So that's it for week 1. Do this for 30 minutes every day, at least. If you can do it for an hour, do it for an hour. But spend a good amount of time and focus, really focus. And try to, you know, enjoy it. The more fun it is, the easiest it is to retain and remember and integrate. So have fun with it. Be a kid discovering a new toy. That's the best advice I can give you at this point. All right, week 2. What are we going to do on week 2 that we haven't done on week 1? Well, not much really. We're going to keep on working on vocabulary retention, on pronunciation. Did I improve there? Pronunciation. And we're going to add a fun little game. I want you to find songs in your target language, and I want you to learn them. But I don't want you to try to understand them. I just want you to learn them by ear. You read them, you just remember the pronunciation and the word, and you compare yourself to the singer. It doesn't matter if you understand what the singer is saying at this point, and quite frankly, most of the time, it's better not to. Find, I don't know, something for kids, something for teenagers, something that is fun, entertaining, that sounds, like you want to snap your fingers or, use your foot to tap the beat. And honestly, this is a very simple, fun exercise, and I agree that it doesn't give you a command of the structure of the language, but you may find yourself enjoying learning the sound of the language. And actually repeating those sentences works like a drill, and it's actually a drill. So spend 5-10 minutes every day learning a song, just learning a song, the words to a song. Even if you don't understand it, make sure you're accurate. So find the words somewhere online, and you'll be glad that you did after a few weeks into the study, because that will train your ear to pronounce and speak a lot more naturally. So that's groundwork for later on. Other than that, vocabulary, the core structures, okay? Try to expand a little bit upon that. Try to learn more vocabulary, apply new vocabulary to stuff you already know, all right? And drill it, and drill it. Those first 2 weeks are the most boring you're gonna have to endure in order to master the language, but they are the groundwork. And after that, it gets better. So keep working at it. All right, now week 3, you're gonna have to start looking for source material for grammar. So where do you find that? Well, online mostly. You can find a ton of free resources that will give you free instructions about the grammar of your target language. Most of the time it's easy enough to find if you are studying Russian, Thai, Chinese, Japanese. All of that stuff is all over the web. There are thousands of websites that are dedicated to the study of languages these days. So it's difficult not to find resources. Okay, so go there. If you cannot find a resource that way, use a grammar book. Not a method book, but a grammar reference book. And start comparing what the method books offer with a simple grammar book. A simple grammar book will probably be much cheaper, but it will be a little bit more, I don't know, I would say serious in shape, right? But it will be clearer. It will be X, then Y, then Z makes this in the target language. And you will understand it a lot better than something with examples all over the place that you're not going to retain. Anyway, okay? So keep working on vocabulary. Keep working on the basic structures, okay? But you should be starting to realize that those basic structures are everywhere in the language you are learning now. You started learning songs. It's time to start translating them. So look for the words in a dictionary or online. Google Trad is your friend. But only look for words, okay? Don't look for sentences. Only look for words, piece by piece. That way, you learn to deconstruct the language, and you learn how the language actually works. And that's the most important thing to do at this point. You need to learn the workings, the cogs in the language. If you can't do that, well, the way you speak will never sound natural at all. And You don't want that. You want to speak as naturally as possible. So, keep on learning new songs, new words, new grammar rules, and I'm going to add something here. Start looking for a TV channel that broadcasts in your target language, or find a YouTube channel that offers documentaries or interviews or whatever in your target language, possibly with subtitles. Okay? Because that will help you associate sounds to words. That was so helpful when I was learning English that I don't know how to explain it, but listening to music or watching movies and having the subtitles while discovering the language itself was the stepping stone that allowed me to be able to speak the way I do now in most of the languages I practice in a few months instead of a few years. So if you do that as early on as possible, you will be way ahead of the pack after just a few weeks. Okay? Very important. So week 3, some TV or some video stuff that you can both listen to, watch, and read. The transcription should be available. Still some more music, verses, choruses, but start translating. Acquire more vocabulary. And we're going to talk about vocabulary in an upcoming lecture. Don't worry about that. And start spreading the application of the 13 core sentences to more diverse topics and more vocabulary options. Okay? So keep writing, keep reading, keep listening. Immerse yourself into the sounds and the sights and the life energy of the language. That's very important. Okay? Week 4. Counters, numbers. Learn to count. Learn to use numbers. Very important in any country you're going to. First of all money is numbers. On small pieces of paper, small coiny, silvery, metal stuff, round stuff, called coins. All of that is just numbers. But if you don't understand how they work, you can't count properly. You cannot translate the amounts in your original currency sometimes. It's gonna be a little bit difficult finding your comfort during a trip. So I advise you to start learning to count as early on as possible. That's why we start at week 4. And in some languages, as I said before, to the Japanese, for an example, some languages are not as simple as 2 cars to say there are 2 cars. Some languages use cars, numbers, units. Japanese is an example of that. I'm sure there are more. And for example, if you say 3 cars in Japanese, you say kuruma sandai, which means kuruma is car, san is 3, dai, units of big mechanical stuff, machines, big machines, right? So 3 units of big machines that are cars. That's how the Japanese say 3 cars. In French, we say 3 voitures, which is 3 cars. Okay? And if you want to order 2 mojitos in Japan, you would say mojito nihon. Mojito nihon o kudasai. O kudasai. Which means give us, in a very polite, formal way. O kudasai, which is object, give, us, me, whoever is asking. Mojitos, 2 cylinders of mojitos, right? Two cylindrical objects that contain mojitos. So glasses, essentially, right? But it could be bottles, it could be anything that resembles a cylinder. So if your target language uses that kind of counting system, be aware of it as soon as possible, because you're going to have a hard time remembering it all, and you're going to have a hard time mastering it extremely rapidly. So might as well start early, okay? So it's something that you need to be aware of. So check it out, learn, inquire, request, demand. Somebody ought to have the answer, don't they? It's that's all for week 4. Nothing great was ever created based on timid actions. And this week you're going to be both bold and daring. This week I dare you to start reading a book, your first book in your target language. You don't have the skills to do that. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the words. I don't understand the grammar all that well. Yes, I know, but that's why you gotta pick up a book that is very, very specific, something that will be accessible to you as a beginner, somewhat beginner, early intermediate, something that doesn't have that many words, because right now you should have less than 500 words under your belt, but that shouldn't stop you. That shouldn't stop you, and that should be a challenge that you're willing to accept. How do you select the book, though? Well, something that would fit a 7-year-old would be best, because these sentence structures and the vocabulary selection would be more accessible than a teenage novel. Something, quite easy for young kids, but not babies. So that's what you want to pick up. So pick one up. Pick a fairy tale book. Something maybe that you know in your own language, and then you pick up the translation, the exact translation to that version, and then you compare both and you work on them side by side. That way you can actually develop a sense of what the book really is about, and you get the feeling of how both languages work compared one to the other one. And that's about it for this week. Pick up a book, keep on working on the previous material, and you'll be fine. So pick up a book, just pick wisely. This week is all about testing your new skills in a very, very fun way. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to tell me that you don't have any skills. Well, you have skills. You should know by now a couple hundred words, vocabulary-wise, and you should know at least the 13 core structures we're talking about in basically lesson 1. So all that combined actually gives you some freedom to express yourself. Not a lot, but enough that you can actually find your way around a very basic conversation with someone. And I know it's a lot to ask, and I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, I'm not ready to do that just yet. But you have to. You need to find someone to talk to. You need to go on the internet. You need to search Google. You need to go to your local community. I don't know. Find someone that will speak to you in their native tongue, which is your target language, which is the language you are learning. At this point, it's so important. I cannot stress that enough. It's extremely important that you start being exposed to the necessity of actually forming sentences and phrases and making that effort as soon as possible. As an adult, it's a different situation compared when you're a kid, where you spend a couple of years actually actively listening to big people talking in a very strange set of sounds, which is called a language, trying to convey ideas. But when you're an adult, you need to actually, put the axe to the stone and grind it. You need to start practicing expressing yourself as soon as possible, as early on as possible. So I want you to find someone this week and offer an exchange, offer lessons in your native language and receive lessons in their native language, which should be your target language for all intent. That's about it. Keep on practicing everything we've been doing so far, and you should be fine. Okay, so it's a matter of just adding some challenge every week and pushing the limit all the time. If you do that, you cannot but improve your skills. So that's what I want you to do this week. Find someone, explain that you're a beginner at learning whatever language it is, and you'll see it's a lot of fun and you'll make new friends. So it's pretty cool. Look for people on the internet, as I said, YouTube, whatever. Find someone. Up until now, the way you've been learning vocabulary has been organized based on frequency of occurrence, which means the more the said word appears in the target language, the sooner you learn it. So in essence, you've been learning a lot of the when, it, that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very simple way to organize things. It's very effective, but you can be more effective than that, and I'm going to explain to you exactly how. The most effective way to learn vocabulary and remember vocabulary is to learn vocabulary thematically. Clearly, it's easier to learn the names of animals, for example, like sheep, cows, horse, all those words that define different animals as a family, as a group, as a theme. It's easier to remember learning about a motorcycle using like front fender or tail light or handlebars or signals. Those words that relate to something that is tangible, that is actually made of, in this case, steel and rubber and paint and electricity and all those things, right? Animals, you can relate to animals very easily. So you will remember stuff much more easily if it fits inside a thematic group. So if you're learning, kitchen tools, it's easier to remember, carving knife, fork, spoon, teaspoon, teapot, pot, frying pan, all those things that relate to daily activities that you practice. Hopefully you practice cooking. Such a fun thing to do. So learn thematically. So what I want you to do is look for the words that the list offers that can be organized into themes, general themes, and start learning thematically to retain vocabulary at least 3 times as fast. And you'll see that learning 30, 40, 50 words in a single day shouldn't be too hard. It should be pretty easy as long as you keep it thematic and tangible and make it fun. Make it fun. If you can make it fun, it's so much easier to remember stuff when you're having fun. Remember, gym class was always feeling a lot shorter than math class. There's a reason for that. We have a sense of time, a sense of duration that is very relative, because the more fun we have, the shorter it feels. A very fun movie doesn't feel very long. right? A boring movie seems like it lasts forever, and you've been incarcerated. So make it fun, and you will both retain vocabulary much faster. Make it thematic for the same reason, and you will learn so much faster it's going to feel like you're not even trying. I guarantee you that. Fun and thematic approaches work best, right? Make it real. That's important. This week is all about you becoming quite the detective. Either that or becoming the most annoying kid on the face of the earth. You know, the kind of kid that wants to know where the wind comes from. This week you're going to learn how to ask questions. What I want you to do is find all those words. What, how, with whom, when, you know, all those words, how to, and have them translated and have that applied to question structures. It might differ from language to language. For example, in English, where is it? Well, it's very different in Japanese. If you're speaking Japanese and you're asking where is it, you're asking where is question mark, and you're not specifying it. Okay, that would be doko desu ka? Doko ni arimasu ka? Where, marker for place, ni, which can be the marker for time, arimasu, which means to exist for non-moving things, non-living things, you know, and ka, which is the question mark in Japanese, okay? So it's a different system. So you're going to have to learn about the system as well as the words that make it up. And you've got a newfound friend, right? You got a partner in conversation, crime. So basically you can start asking questions away, and you should. You should start to formulate things in a more natural manner. That's very important that you do as early on as possible. That will get you much further if you start early on. Okay? So ask questions, find the words, have them translated, have the core structures demonstrated to you and translated for you by your new partner, Google Translate. I would stay away from that one myself, but if that's all you've got as a resource, use it, okay? And make it, have it verified by someone. You can find someone to verify that stuff for you on Fiverr, for example, for very cheap, like $5. So do it that way and you will improve much faster. Asking questions is very important. It's the other part of the conversation when you're saying stuff. If you want the conversation to keep going, somebody has to ask a question at some point, because otherwise it's a monologue and that's not what you're looking for. So learn to ask questions effectively and you will improve much faster. It's a very important part of your training, and this week is all about this fact. Week 9 is when you're going to start creating much more complex sentences. That's when you're going to start using things like because, then, therefore, henceforth, all those little words that make up sentences that are actually like a grown-up speaking. And it might be a completely different system to what you're used to. So you got to start digging how that works in your target language, and your new conversation friend should help you with that, and your grammar book should help you with that, and it's very important. But you should have encountered a few of those sentences before, because you have been reading a book, right? And I'm sure, at least in a few places, that book used those kinds of extended sentences. Otherwise, that book was targeted to much too young people, kids, and you should pick up a book that is designed and written for slightly older kids. So that's very important, and I want you to use it orally, and I want you to use it written. I want you to start writing stuff. Simple stuff, but start writing now. It's very important, okay? So week 9, start writing, start using more complex sentences, force yourself to speak in a more accurate and more intricate and more sophisticated manner. That's when you start actually, playing with the big boys. All right, this week is all about learning to speak in a more advanced manner. We're 10 weeks into practicing the new language, and right now all we're doing is using tenses in a very, very uncontrolled manner. And I want you to start learning to control tenses. So you're going to have to learn tenses. My advice is start with simple past, present, and simple future, and then build on from there. Because if you try to learn 7 tenses like we have in French, we have more than that, but we've got 7 basic tenses, and most of them are not necessarily useful all the time. We use commonly 4 tenses, which is compound past, past simple, present, and future. And that's mostly what we use, okay? And in English, you got a preterite, which is simple past, progressive forms, like I am doing, I was doing, that kind of stuff. And I do, or I don't, which are simple forms, or I will do stuff. So French and English differ on that point, and so does Japanese. In Japanese, for example, there is no plain future. If you want to say, I will go to the bank tomorrow, you will say, ashita ginko ni ikimasu, meaning tomorrow, bank, marker for direction or movement, go. So it's a more simple structure, which indicates the future tense by using tomorrow. So it's not even a conjugation per se. It's just a system to indicate that this will occur in the future. Okay, so learn how your basic tenses work and build upon that. There may be more to learn, like in German. It's not just about conjugations, it's about declinations. You will change adjectives and some words to make them fit a certain system, right? It's called modes. But at first, don't worry about it, because most native speakers will have a one-size-fits-all kind of mode, and that's the one you want to learn at first. You can focus on details and improving very, very specific things later on. Right now, you're just molding the clay. And what you want to do is be able to use very specific information, very broad information that you can apply to so many things that you don't need to think about it, and you can apply in as many situations as possible and not worry about it too much. Specifics, keep them for later on when you refine everything. It's like, when you forge a sword, at first it's just a piece of steel, and then you refine it, and then you hone it, and then you polish it. If you start polishing it first, it will never have the right shape. So what you want to do is build the general shape, refine it to the point that it's actually extremely polished. But right now, keep it as simple as possible. A couple of tenses, a couple of modes if necessary, and that's it. Simple information that you can apply to as many things as possible. Okay? So, simple past simple, depends on how you want to say it. Present, future, basic forms. If there's a progressive form, such as I am doing that, learn that as well. But it will, most of the time, be a very simple form to learn, and it will just build upon the simple tenses. So it shouldn't be too hard. If there are modes involved in the language you're learning, such as object mode or causal mode or accusative, as in German, then check it out, see how that works, and inquire to your newfound friend if there's a one-size-fits-all mode, and you should be set. We're almost at the end of our 12 initial week plan. And by now you should have a very, very comprehensive overview of what the language you are learning feels, looks, works like. Okay? And I hope that you carry on after those 12 weeks with the advice given in the last lecture. This is very important. But right now we're on week 11. And week 11 is about being a little bit more assertive. You're going to have to learn how to request, how to ask for things, and give orders. And it can be tricky. Some languages actually use different levels of politeness to address people. In Japanese, for example, which is, as you can now tell, my favorite non-native language besides English, the politeness level is contained within the choice of words. If you want to say, give me this, you will say, kore o kure, if you're being very impolite. All right? Because you're shortening the verb and using the imperative, it's very, very, very rough. But if you want to say the same thing to somebody you respect, you will say, kore o kudasai. And kudasai, kudasaru is a very polite way to request stuff, to ask for things and for people to give you things. So depending on the language you are learning, you will need to find out how being polite works. In French, we want to ask for something, we use s'il vous plaît or s'il te plaît if the person we are addressing to is someone more familiar. And it's exactly the same as please in English, but please is a very simple word, right? And s'il vous plaît, if you please, and there's no single you in French. It's either vous, that you will use for somebody you're not so familiar with, okay? Or a police officer, or somebody at the city hall, somebody you have some distance with, or tu, which could be used for friends and buddies and people you know a little bit better. Okay, so that's a difference. So being polite is very important, and it's especially important if you're giving orders, if you're actually asking for, that people do things for you. You don't want to say passe-moi l'eau to a waitress, right? Whereas it's perfectly okay to do that. You might want to say please, but it's okay to do that with your kids. Passe-moi l'eau. Okay, pass the water. Right? You could add please, and you would, but if it's your kid, passe l'eau s'il te plaît. All right, please, pass the water. It's very different. Pourriez-vous me passer l'eau, s'il vous plaît? Very different. Okay, so the politeness level is not the same at all, and it's still a request. Both are requests. One is more of an order, than a request, but you get the idea, I guess. Okay, so learn what requesting and ordering stuff feels like in your language, in your target language, and learn how to be polite while ordering and requesting stuff. That's very important. That will earn you respect and will make you avoid any sort of trouble that is being polite related. Okay? All right, final week coming up. Welcome to week 12. Congratulations, you made it through the core essential part of the course. And now you have all the tools necessary to improve your skills at a much faster rate than ever before. So you know the approaches, the tools, the tricks, how to bend the rules a little bit, and we're going to bend one. Well, actually, we're going to break one right now. Now you can pick up a phrase book. I know I said it was a no, but actually it can prove useful after a while. You're not a beginner anymore. Remember I said the worst thing you can do for a beginner, use a phrase book. Well, you're not a beginner anymore. And the cool thing about phrase books is they are organized in a thematic way, which mimics the way we are learning vocabulary. Remember? So it's actually quite useful as a tool at this point, because you're going to be exposed to life-like situations in those books, like at the station, like at the airport, at the museum, at the at the swimming pool, at the kindergarten. All those situations that can prove useful and that require a very specific, set of words, for example, or expressions, idiomatic expressions. So a phrase book can help you in that regard, acquiring different components of the language that you might just not be exposed to in a regular book, even though you are supposed to be reading a kid's book at this point or having finished a kid's book at this point. A phrase book will expose you to different forms of sentences and phrases and different types of words that apply to very specific situations. So at this point it can be a very, very useful tool. Use one, pick one, but don't just randomly read through it. Use one as a reference. Go to any lesson or any chapter and note everything you don't know and include them in your thematic vocabulary documents, because that's the way you want to organize your work. If you organize your work thematically, it's better. You will retain, you will remember stuff much longer with much less effort involved, and that's what we want. That's what we want. If we get that, it's a good deal. So congratulations again for going through the whole course, going through weeks 1 to 12, and I'll leave you with the next lecture where I explain to you what to do after the first 12 weeks, because the program is 6 months, right? And 12 weeks is only 3. So what to do next? Welcome back. In this short lecture, I'm going to show you how easy it is to find the initial resources you're going to need in order to start learning your new language. I'm going to go online and find word lists, grammar rules, pronunciation guides, the very core stuff. So watch this lecture carefully and you'll be ready to go in no time. Okay, so we're opening a Google search engine homepage, and what we're going to do is first we're going to look up the most occurring 1,000 words in, say, Russian. Simple enough. 1,000 most common, and you can already see that Google knows what I'm looking for. Most common words in Russian. You can get a PDF, or you can just, search for it. So, for example, let's try with the first link. And you get the top 50 ones over 12 pages. That should keep you busy for a while. Okay, and you even get how to pronounce them, or what they mean, or example sentences. The translation, so crazy. And you're probably thinking, yeah, but it works for Russian, maybe it doesn't work for anything else. In, let's say, Thai, for example. 1,000 most common Thai words. You can create. So this is actually a file which you can download. So you can check it out. There are message boards talking about this. Thai frequency lists with English definitions. Dogs 1,000 Thai word frequency collection on TV. List of 3,000 most common Thai words. So that will give you quite a lot of work, and yeah, that will give you a good 6 months worth of vocabulary study. So try something. Any other language, Spanish, for example. Spanish is way too easy. One written one language is .net/Spanish/ most common Spanish words with audio. So flashcards, Wiktionary, frequency lists. In Japanese. Want to try Japanese? I know it does exist because I went there. Example of bitband.com. I don't know. 1 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 to 2,000 to 3,000, or the big list 1 to 3,000. So it's pretty easy to find that stuff and never be short on work to do. So that's something very simple. You want to know about basic Japanese grammar? Rules. For example, Japanese grammar guide, 100 grammar points. Japanese grammar rules for every beginner. There are so many resources online. You'll never need another book. Really, it's a very, very simple way to always have content to study. So you want to learn about basic Vietnamese, for example. Grammar. Learn Vietnamese grammar. YourVietnamese.com. Vietnamese grammar and overview. So you can study stuff. There are videos about this stuff as well. And as long as you're organized and you can, take notes and be careful not to be messy about that stuff, it's very easy to build your own language study system. How about we find a new friend online? Girlfriend, right? Wife? No. Vietnamese language exchange, my language exchange, learn to speak it. There are so many links, it's just ridiculous. So all those resources are there for you, for the taking, and you should, put them to good use and really take advantage of that. because it's a very fun time to be studying languages. I'm telling you, 20 years ago, not so easy. These days, couldn't be simpler. Hey, welcome back. This lecture is called How to Remember Anything Instantly. And the most important part would be not forget about it the next day. A lot of people run into that problem actually, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with information retention and all that stuff. And there's a very simple process that you can, use, and you will remember stuff more vividly, faster. You will learn faster, and it will be more fun. So let's get to it. First, we need to learn how your memory works. It works using 3 different steps. Step 1, something grabs your attention or you focus on something. It could be a vocabulary list, or it could be something external, like you notice something, in your surroundings. It grabs your attention. Step 2, you get an emotional response. Your emotional response could be you don't get one. If you're learning vocabulary, most of the time you won't get an emotional response from that. If, on the other hand, a dog comes out of nowhere running in front of your car, you do get an emotional response. And guess what? The vocabulary thing, you probably won't remember for long if you don't get excited about it, if you don't get involved. The dog thing, you definitely get involved and you definitely get an emotional response, and that actually defines if you save it or if you delete it. If you save it, it's because something was out of the ordinary, or it created something in you that triggered your saving the information. And if you got bored, annoyed, or it was tedious, most of the time, you're going to remember the process, but you're not going to remember the content. So in essence, you're going to delete it. And the difference between what you keep and what you forget is right there. Is it emotional? Is it stimulating? Is it fun? Is it entertaining? Am I involved in it? Right? Your emotional response does the triggering. So, to keep, you must commit. There must be some kind of involvement, excitement, stimulation. And in short, to remember something, you got to give it enough importance so that your system saves it for as long as you will need it, or for as long as you will use it. And here's how you do it. It's a very simple process. Check it out. Step 1, you focus. You must be there. If you don't focus, you don't actually concentrate. Why would your mind, give it any importance? It has to be, very important to you. So you need to be there. You don't think about your shopping list while you're learning vocabulary, unless it's shopping vocabulary. Step 2, create a story involving you. Be there. If you're learning about shopping vocabulary, create a shopping story, or think back about a shopping experience you had that was very fun, and include those words that you're learning. Include the words in the story. Create a new story. Make it vivid. Make it lively. Make it real. Imagine it was real. Create a memory of it. All right? And use the words you're all learning. Step 3, use it. That's where having a partner is so important. Having a language partner. Having someone you need to talk to, having someone you need to tell your day, to tell about your day, having someone to talk about your relationships, your travel experience, your everyday life, life at work, and relationships and everything. And if you get a partner to talk to, you're going to experience a quantum leap in your abilities over time, as opposed to somebody who doesn't, because you're going to use the stuff you are learning. And believe me, it makes all the difference. So, step 1, focus and concentrate. Be there. Step 2, create a story. Be involved. Create an environment where the words are actually used. Sample phrases work great for that, but you need to create them for yourself. And it needs to trigger some kind of emotional response. So, very important that you enjoy the process within the story. You must enjoy the story itself so that it's fun to tell and it's fun to remember, and or it can be scary, or it has to be emotional in some way. And step 3, use it. That's very simple. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? Use it or lose it, as they say. So use it. Find a language partner and use the words, use the system. All right, this is the final section, section 3. And in this section, in this one lecture at this point, I want to explain to you what you can do to develop even more. And it's so simple. At this point, you got all the basics of the language, okay? All you are missing is some natural expressions, for example, natural formulas, like idiomatic stuff. And how do you acquire that? Well, it's quite simple, actually. Watch movies, read books, read magazines, watch documentaries, watch TV, listen to music. Have fun with that language. Don't try to learn from a new method and new stuff. No, just use tools that are available for free to anyone. Use YouTube, use Google, use your partner and your newfound friend that you acquired a couple of weeks ago, and start talking a lot more naturally. Discuss what happens to you on a daily basis, and I want you to write it down as well, because speaking the language is important, but you need to write it down, because writing requires a whole different train of thought than speaking does. And if you can write down your diary, for example, in your target language, then you've come a long way, okay? So have fun. That's the best advice I can give you. Have fun with this. Speaking a different language is fun. You gain access to a world that 95% of the world population doesn't. So it's something to celebrate, okay? Find new friends. Join a book club in the target language. I don't know, make it fun. That's the best advice I can give you. There are a couple of things I could tell you, but at this point, fun is the key word if you didn't get it yet. So thank you. Thank you for following this course. Thank you for joining. I hope it lived up to your expectations. And if you liked it, please review it. That helps me tremendously to create more courses, to keep on improving the course. And if you've got feedback, well, feel free to contact me via personal message. And thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. And I hope to see you in the next course.